Okay, this is second part to when I worked in Bedminster, and I thought I'd put a bit about dentistry. Why not? And some materials that you may or may not have used, like dental amalgam, a bit about oral surgery, and some things about perio. But also, at the end, I've put a bit of protection. Not sure how long this will take, but I think that hopefully be the most useful part. So anyway, I'm going to stop talking because this is a really good advert, and it was the most expensive advert ever made. I tried it a moment ago, but it just didn't play. I think there's a bit of a delay because I'm here in my shed.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary.
Yeah, well, obviously the sound's not great, but if you type in that into YouTube, it'll bring up the video. It's well worth a watch by Ridley Scott, and I think he's better at making videos than I am. And I don't think there's enough time left for me to actually do anything like Blade Runner, which is also another good film, and futuristic. And we need to be thinking about what we can do for the future, and we want to think outside the box. So there's no reason why we can't use disruptive innovation to improve our working lives and also improve the health of the general public. Unfortunately, the government don't take a lead on this, and if it's just left to pharmaceutical companies or big dental companies, the progress will be slow, if any. So I hope you embrace some of my ideas and help.
And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
Well, these two pictures on the left are taken from my iPhone. So the photos from my mobile phone. The pictures of the teeth. Well, sadly, they're my teeth, and you can see some different years on them. So the ones on the left are ones I took today, and they're using these cameras on the right. Now, I'm pretty sure of the two cameras, the one on the left I bought about 3 years ago, and the one on the right I bought about 9 months ago. But actually, I think the old one's better. It gives a better image. It's got a better light, but they cost under £50. And we need to bear that in mind. But basically, the amalgams that you can see, where's my mouse? Like this one, right? And yeah, slightly better there. That's been there since I was a student, so it's only been there 40 years. So it's done all right. Yeah, and the crown broke quite some time ago. I think it was a bit stressed. I think it was on my 6th or 7th marriage, and the crown started to break. But in April, when I just finished, I'd cycled to my mum's house on Anglesey, and yeah, when we arrived, the side of the tooth cracked off. So here, this isn't an amalgam failure. Again, the filling would have done when I was a student. We practiced on each other. I mean, I think we did need it done. But basically, the amalgam fillings lasted longer than my tooth. That's a different way of looking at it. But it's a really good material. And so you hear a lot saying, oh, well, composites are better. Well, actually, they don't last longer in your average mouth. So when someone comes in and wants a white filling, and if they're replacing the silver fillings, and let's be fair, they probably last better now because they got silver in, which is antibacterial, I guess. So we don't have to always comply with what the patient necessarily wants, especially on the health service. Amalgam's been a brilliant material, and it lasts, as you can see. So in the end, I think we did a few things. So, but this is another video, and this is just a nonsense, really, because oops, I'll get the sound out now, because it's playing on people's what's it called, anxieties. And so for a while, everyone was worried about amalgam. But when you think about it, the vapor that's produced every time you take out amalgam, that's what the dental nurse and myself are exposed to all the time. And well, maybe that's why all of us are mad. Anyway, but I don't think so. And that certainly was mad. But it is difficult to find some good references for this. But this person has got some good videos out there on how to do basic stuff. And so I'd recommend that as his website. Sorry, and obviously he's got his sound with that. But I did do something myself, which was this, and it was during COVID. And so the idea would be that for those of you who haven't had a great deal of experience, then it would be a resource for you just to look up on your phone before you got someone in to do that complex root filling in a wisdom tooth, which some people seem to do for some reason. And so, yeah, so this is, I've changed it a bit, but not a lot, because there was absolutely no interest. But if you go and look at it on your phone, you can see the idea. And, you know, putting a bronze standard and a gold standard, you know, that's obviously awkward. But then it's showing you how to do an amalgam. And I think the first one's his. Why it's under rubber dam doing an occlusal amalgam is beyond me. But actually, this bottom slide, I'd forgotten about that. I've forgotten about most of these things, really. But that is something that you ought to think about. And you can see, you learn how to do these things playing around on your phone. And if you have any good videos that you use, then I'll put them on. Just send them to me at this address. I've contacted lots of dental schools asking for videos that they must give you, but I think it was only Dundee replied. So there's some of theirs on there, and clearly it's incomplete, but it you know, it would be a good resource. Oh yeah, and this is a video on oral surgery. I think it went on to oral surgery, but it said it was unsuitable, which is why it's blank. So this one, yeah, I think that this is a video. All right, no, that was the one. Yeah, that's too harsh. But I used to do at university, we used to do simple gingivectomies, which is basically if someone's gums were swollen, you cut them. There was blood everywhere. I never did one in practice. And quite right too. After all this time, we realized they don't work. But that's what we were taught back in 81, 82. And yeah, when I was there, as I said, I didn't have a principal with me, but I did realize a patient needed an apicectomy. And so I think I told you I work with I live with a couple of other dentists, so we had a chat about it. No one had done one, so I looked it up in my book. But now you've got YouTube, and as with all these pictures, you can just pause them or go back, which is the beauty about using video, and see what this chap does. It does an excellent job. Anyway, I'm getting a bit squeamish now, so I'll move on. And so, moving on about perio, the thing about perio was that it really has been very difficult to, after all this time, to make any progress. So the person there, Martin Addy, he moved to Bristol, and I met him a few times and had a chat. And so what I did do for people who had, really large pockets, I did make up my own acrylic strips with metronidazole. And at a later date, I had a Cavimed for Corsadil, but we now know that doesn't work either. In fact, very little does work with perio. I mean, specialist periodontologists are jumping all over saying you can do all these kind of things, and you can do things, but the main thing is the patient, and that's what is part of the app. So it explains what a BPE is. Well, that's the one I did for the plaque index, but yeah, it's also my view is that if we can show people how to disclose themselves and then encourage them to get a plaque score really low, then that will guarantee your work and make all our lives a lot easier. And it's obviously a vain hope, but we can try and together make behavioral change. So that's one of the sides in the app. And I think this is the same. I made some videos basically showing people how they can do it. So it is a case that we can use the phone, but these new cameras are getting better all the time for in the mouth. And when it comes to spending the money on an electric toothbrush, I think electric brushes are very good. I think it might be the 2-minute timer that's the best thing. But I think in the future, cameras will be a big help. And previously, I spoke about mindfulness, and peer review to support one another. And yeah, that was the university that I did it on Future Learn. On our peer review, I put things on Dropbox, and you could do the same. So if anyone does it, they can put their slides onto Dropbox for yourselves, or again, just share them with us. We'll put them on Denflix. And I also said that there was a good, there was one on dentistry on Future Learn. And I went on the course with this chap in Bristol, face-to-face years ago with an SLR, but really I just used a little camera that, you know, they got to be very good. The first one cost thousands, but as I say, now they're extremely reasonably priced, even for the patient. But they've also, I was wrong, they've have added a few more that I'd missed, so I just found out this today. So one of the things I've been doing is making some videos for people in care homes. So I started doing something similar to this. However, I come across this, Mouth Care Matters. Now, if you have a patient who's a carer, then certainly promote this. Carers do not really get any finance. We complain that they're not financing dentistry. Well, these people who work in care homes, there's very little finance for them. So I'm working on something that can help them. But in the meantime, if you point them in this direction, you know, that could be a huge help. Save me a lot of time. Oh yeah, and so what I used to do, so regarding improving perio, it's basically, it's all on the patient. We need to push it back to them. And so no one knows what the BP is. I had some help with Innovate UK. I think it was on sales. And the person who was doing it had worked for a corporate for 20 years. And she didn't know what a BPE is. So she'd worked for a dentist and didn't know what a BPE is. We really need to focus on a BPE and tell people what it is and tell them how it's related to the general health. So you'll see this in lots of places. It's on a website that I've done. And this is what I used to send to all my patients. So when I took the BPE, I'd fill in the box. Also, generally with the BWE, I'd do the child and the parent and always point out that the child was worse than the parent because of carbonated drinks. But the idea was to promote the app and promote people to take ownership of their health. And you can do it too. So I'll keep banging on about that. I think this is a brilliant idea. The guy did it, was a genius. Oh yeah, and he used old technology as well as new. So I made out these cards, and the thing about the cards is especially useful for a new patient. And you see the idea there that it's a bit obscured, but I used to circle the numbers, 1 and 2, like 1 would be a power brush, I think, and 2 would be interdental brushing, but there's 1 on pocket cleaning, and there's 1 on habit. I think there's 1 on manual brushing. And I used to give them a card. But you must send an email, as you saw before. And I used to check that they'd received it before they left the surgery. And that way, you've got some defense, because all the detail about their gum health and what you're recommending really is there if ever they come back to complain, and it'll be there on your practice software. That's the idea. Oh yes, and so I think this was, again, is I got stuck in India, and you do wonder why people don't really help us. So this advice I used to give in Bedminster. I seemed to hand out quite a lot of antibiotics, and yeah, lots of people, if they came in with an acute swelling, you give them antibiotics and make an appointment for them, and I suppose that would be A for antibiotic, A for appointment, and A for absent, because they never turned up. And yet later on they come again. Would you give them antibiotics again? They prefer that to have their tooth out. I can't see any real studies on how this works, but if we did AAA back in COVID and spent all that money on it, why has there not been any research to see what happened to the people who came in and didn't return? My gut feeling is those people will probably hang on to their teeth a lot longer than those people who returned. And the bit about the statin and the moxil and flagyl, I bought them in India, bought them just over the counter. And so whilst we have, this worry about antibiotics, for the standard antibiotics, I'm not sure what the issue is. And when I was out in India, this is slightly going off beat, but my friend, he's a consultant in London, and he was warning me about how COVID was going to kick off. And actually he lost 3 of his colleagues, died early on. yeah, we need to learn from these things. And one of them was teledentistry. And this is just stuff about how prevention works. I'll show you at the end. I've always been interested in this, but I could never get any interest from Health Education England on digital dentistry, so I did my own course. I also asked if we could do courses on teaching one another how to improve our IT skills, because when it comes to communication, you know, it's all about IT. Yeah, what's it, Invisalign? Well, that's a great bit of kit, but it's all about making money. And if it goes wrong, you are responsible, not Mr. Invisalign. And so I did think with the younger FDs that we could, well, it's not younger FDs, just FDs in general, but you could do something else that'll help one another. And this is how, it's called agile or startup or lean startup and this kind of stuff. We should think for ourselves a bit more and just think about what we're doing sometimes and how we can improve it. And if we get a system where we can collaborate, we'll all end up better off. We ended up working in isolation, and often that just means you make the same mistake again and again and again. You just get better at making them. We ought to have some slightly alternative viewpoints. So that was that. And yeah, I think I probably talked enough, but this is where everything is that I've done. As regards to dentistry, during COVID, I was asked to give a talk on prevention, and I've always been interested in prevention. But there was someone who was giving talks, but didn't like the idea of doing it on Zoom. So they asked me to do a talk on Zoom on prevention. And well, I'd always been interested in, as you would say, minimal invasive dentistry. So someone provided the detail on prevention, and really I just made the rest. And so if you have a look, this chap's really good. If you're interested in digital dentistry, and you should be, then certainly go there. He's got some brilliant advice, and it's really up to date and current, as you would say. So some of this may not be current, and anyone wants me to change it, if there's a consensus there, I would change it. But clearly I've made it about my app because I was looking for an app and there just wasn't a good one out there. And, you know, like everyone, I have a blog, as you can see from the comments section. No one really looks at it. But it's still there, it's still relevant. The thing that has changed is technology. Human behavior doesn't change. And so we need to use the technology to get our patients or the general public just to nudge them into better health. And for FDs, yeah, as I said, I had to do a 3-hour Zoom talk to them. I feel sorry for them, but I did have a practice go beforehand, bearing in mind I'd never done one before. And I'm not sure how far this goes. I think I gave up the will to live myself. But if you go a bit lower down, it's got the 3-hour video there, but with timings. And a lot of the slides that you'll see on these presentations are there. So as before, if you have any feedback, I'd be grateful. Individually, we do nothing. But if we can organize ourselves and, you know, use each other's strengths, then maybe we'll make a difference. And as I say in many places, I hope that you finish your career a lot more upbeat than many of the dentists at the moment. We've been let down by the successive governments. But that doesn't mean we can't promote change for the benefit of everyone.